At exactly 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, the quiet of my neighborhood shattered with a sound that snapped me awake even though I was thousands of miles from home. Clank, clank, clank. That sharp metal bite, bolt cutters ripping through the security chain on my locked vehicle, echoed out of my sister's phone like a warning shot. "Stone, she's cutting your lock, right now. She brought a tow truck. You need to see this," Lena whispered, her voice trembling. Still groggy inside a humid military tent on the other side of the world, I fumbled for the screen. The image came into focus just long enough for my heartbeat to spike like I'd been ambushed. There she was. Vivian Crestwood, president of the Maple Ridge HOA, full-time tyrant, part-time suburban queen, standing in her floral bathrobe and fuzzy slippers, brandishing bolt cutters like she was performing a public execution. And the target of her suburban fury? My federal task force Jeep. Not a regular Jeep, not a private vehicle, a government-issued surveillance platform loaded with sensitive equipment, encrypted radios, and tech I'm not even supposed to describe. To her, it was an eyesore. To the United States government, it was classified property. To me, it was the one thing I needed to do my job and return home alive. The tow truck driver filmed in shock as Vivian barked orders like a dictator at dawn. "Cut it! Cut all of it! HOA authority overrides whatever nonsense he left lying around." She didn't know the Jeep was wired. She didn't know cutting that chain would trigger federal protocols. She didn't know she had just stepped onto the wrong side of a federal felony. But I knew. And my stomach dropped. Because this wasn't random harassment. Vivian had been gunning for my family the moment I inherited my grandmother's home 3 months earlier. Maple Ridge looked peaceful from the outside. Matching beige houses, lawns trimmed like military haircuts, street lamps that glowed warm at night. But underneath that picture-perfect gloss lived a queenpin who ran the HOA like a miniature government she believed she owned. When Grandma Teresa passed, leaving her home to me, I thought I'd gained a safe place for Lena while I served deployments. Instead, I'd inherited the battleground known as Vivian's territory. Vivian Crestwood was the type of suburban ruler who took herself so seriously she carried a clipboard to neighborhood barbecues. The type who measured grass blades. The type who sent violation notices if your holiday lights stayed up a single day past her acceptable window. She didn't run an HOA, she ran an empire of intimidation. I'd barely left for my assignment with the counter-narcotics task group when the trouble began. The Jeep, my work vehicle, was marked with federal insignia in plain sight. But 2 weeks after I deployed, Lena texted me. "Stone, she's given you a violation, says your vehicle is forbidden." That made no sense. Government vehicles are explicitly protected in our community bylaws. Military, law enforcement, emergency service, all allowed. But Vivian had never cared about rules. She cared about control. When my sister showed her deployment orders, Vivian sneered. "Rules apply to everyone, dear, even soldiers, even your brother. Perhaps your family should consider a neighborhood better suited to your lifestyle." That was Vivian's favorite word. Lifestyle. Code for, "We don't want you here." Lena told me later that Vivian had been targeting military families for years. Fabricated violations, mysterious fines, threats about liens on homes. The more Lena dug through Grandma's old filing boxes, the more the truth leaked out like poison. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a campaign. A campaign run by a woman who believed military families were disruptive, unstable, and lowering community character. I didn't know the full scope yet. I didn't know what Vivian and her husband Gregory were planning. I didn't know they'd been weaponizing the HOA against us for profit. All I knew in that moment was this. Vivian Crestwood was cutting through a federal chain, trying to steal a federal vehicle on camera at dawn while I watched helplessly from a war zone. And that was only the beginning. Because what Lena caught on camera that morning wasn't just illegal. It triggered a national security alert that would expose a criminal network hiding behind picket fences and drag an entire neighborhood into a war they never saw coming. From the moment I saw Vivian Crestwood hacking through my security chain, I knew this wasn't some impulsive HOA tantrum. This was escalation. A premeditated move from someone who'd been inching toward a line she finally decided to jump over. But what Lena told me next made my blood pressure spike harder than any firefight overseas. "Stone, there's a tow truck circling the block. He keeps slowing down in front of the driveway. Vivian keeps waving him forward." Even from 8,000 miles away, I could feel the adrenaline searing through my veins. Inside that Jeep was almost $300,000 worth of task force equipment, thermal cams, encrypted radios, GPS scramblers, and a few tools I'm not legally allowed to name. Losing that vehicle wasn't just embarrassing, it was catastrophic. I steadied my breathing, forcing my mind into operational mode, the same state I adopt before breaching a cartel compound. "Lena," I said, my voice low, "do not go outside. Record everything. Keep your distance." "I am," she whispered. "But Stone, she invited someone else." That made me freeze. "Who?" Lena turned her phone and zoomed in. 2 private security guards in matching white SUVs stood beside Vivian like her personal enforcers. Broad shoulders, tactical belts, earpieces, the whole overcompensation package. They weren't law enforcement, they weren't military. They were rent-a-cops hired to intimidate. Vivian pointed at my Jeep like she was identifying contraband. "Documented the vehicle thoroughly. The community deserves safety. This military equipment shouldn't be here." My fists clenched hard enough to make my knuckles ache. These idiots weren't just filming, they were photographing each tech panel, each sensor, each antenna. Sensitive equipment, federal intelligence hardware, things unauthorized civilians had no business touching, much less recording. Lena's voice trembled across the connection. "Stone, they're saying you're dangerous." That hit harder than anything. I sat in a metal chair inside a sweltering desert outpost, the dust swirling around me, listening to strangers smear my name in the neighborhood my grandmother poured her entire life into. What exactly did they say? Lena swallowed, the quiver in her throat crackling through the phone. "They told Mrs. Albright that military vehicles increase security risks and that you might be involved in operations that could endanger the community. They're scaring people. They even told her your Jeep might contain explosives." Explosives? My pulse thrashed in my ears. These idiots were spreading lies to justify their harassment, twisting my service into something suspicious, something threatening, something unwelcome. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself not to shout. Anger fuels bad decisions. "Listen carefully," I said, each syllable sharp. "Stay inside, record everything, tell no one you're on the phone with me. I'll handle this." "Stone, I don't know how much longer I can deal with this. Mom didn't raise us to run, but I'm scared." My chest tightened. Lena had always been the steady one, the calm, sweet middle school teacher who could break up fights between 6th graders with a single stern glance. Hearing fear in her voice made something cold settle inside me. I wasn't just dealing with an HOA bully. I was dealing with a calculated smear campaign designed to push military families out. Vivian's harassment didn't start with bolt cutters. The first blow landed weeks earlier. An email, a violation notice, a $50 per day fine for unauthorized commercial vehicle storage. That alone was nonsense. Government vehicles were exempt under our bylaws. But Vivian didn't care about exemptions. She cared about power. Lena's attempts to explain, showing deployment orders, offering to cover the Jeep, quoting the bylaws word for word, were brushed off like lint on a blazer. "Rules are rules, dear," Vivian had said with a fake smile. People like your brother tend to bend them. People like your brother. I knew that tone. I'd heard versions of it my entire life. And Vivian wasn't working alone. Her husband, Gregory Crestwood, city councilman, real estate investor, and full-time snake, gave her political insulation. The Crestwoods operated like a two-person regime. He used influence, she used intimidation. Together, they were clearing the path for something bigger. I didn't know it yet, but this was just the first domino. The tow truck finally crept toward the driveway. Lena gasped. "Stone, he's lowering the ramp." My muscles tensed. The driver stared at the federal insignia, then at Vivian, then back at the Jeep. "Ma'am, this is government property." Vivian's face twisted with rage. "I don't care if it belongs to the Pentagon. It violates HOA regulations. Load it." And with that one command, recorded from 3 different angles, she crossed a threshold few people ever come back from. My grandmother once told me, bullies always go too far. She was right. Because what Vivian tried next didn't just break an HOA rule. It triggered the involvement of military lawyers, federal command, and a legal avalanche that would expose the Crestwoods' real agenda, starting with a discovery that would flip this war on its head.
The moment the tow truck's steel ramp screeched against the pavement, I knew I had to escalate. Not with fists, not with threats, with law. Military law. Federal law. The kind Vivian Crestwood had no idea even existed. Because while Vivian believed she was queen of Maple Ridge, there were agencies whose authority towered over every HOA rule in the country, and I had access to them. The call that turned the war. During my next authorized communication window, limited to just 9 minutes thanks to operational restrictions, I contacted the one office every service member prays they never need, but is grateful exists. JAG. Judge, Advocate, General. Military lawyers. I laid out everything. The fabricated violations, the attempt to tow federal property, the harassment of my sister, the unauthorized photographs, the chain cutting. Within minutes, Staff Sergeant Danielle Ruiz, a JAG litigation bulldog known for dismantling city councils the way some people solve crossword puzzles, was reviewing my case file. She listened quietly, too quietly, until I finished. Then she exhaled sharply. "Sergeant Delgado, that woman didn't commit an HOA violation. She committed federal crimes. Multiple." If my heart wasn't already hammering, it was now. Ruiz continued, her voice switching to that clipped, controlled tone lawyers use right before someone gets obliterated. The Service Member Civil Relief Act specifically prohibits targeting deployed personnel or interfering with their property. She's in violation of that. But more importantly, your Jeep is government property. Cutting the lock? Attempting to move it? Photographing equipment? That's potential espionage, Sergeant. The word hit me like a sandstorm. Espionage. Against an HOA president, in slippers. Ruiz wasn't dramatizing. She was stating facts. I could almost picture Vivian's face if she ever learned what that word actually meant. Ruiz wasn't done. "I'm filing a complaint with your base commander. This triggers a federal liaison review. If she keeps pushing, we escalate to Homeland Security. Let your sister know help is coming." Help was coming. Finally. The twist Lena uncovered. But while legal firepower mobilized behind the scenes, Lena was doing what she always did best, thinking like a teacher. Teachers have a superpower most people underestimate. They notice patterns, and Lena began seeing patterns. She dug into Grandma Teresa's old HOA storage boxes, the ones Grandma kept stuffed with meeting minutes, newsletters, and decades of community paper trails. Dusty manila folders, handwritten notes, old photocopies. In one particular folder, she found something that made her breath hitch. A letter from 4 years ago, written by none other than Vivian Crestwood herself, addressed to the County Planning Commission. The subject line chilled me. Recommendation against military housing incentive programs in Maple Ridge. I felt my jaw tighten. Lena read it aloud. Transient military families do not align with the long-term community investment standards Maple Ridge strives to maintain. Translation: keep military families out. She continued digging, and what she uncovered next made my blood run ice cold. Every military family in Maple Ridge, every single one, had been hit with fake violations, fines for non-existent issues, threats of liens, intimidation from Vivian's compliance patrols, all while civilian families with worse infractions never received a single notice. This wasn't personal. This wasn't random. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated discrimination campaign. And Vivian believed she'd get away with it because her husband Gregory sat on the city council and could smother any complaints before they reached daylight. Lena's voice trembled when she called me again. "Stone, she's been doing this for years. It's not just us. She targeted the Barker family when Sergeant Barker deployed. She fined the Washingtons for noise disturbances because their baby cried at night. She cited Mr. Nelson for storing his wheelchair ramp incorrectly." My stomach churned with disgust. This wasn't some power-tripping neighbor. This was systemic, intentional, cruel. And then came the worst part. Lena's voice cracked. She did it to Grandma, too. The moment everything got personal. Lena found a stack of violation notices addressed to Grandma Teresa during her final months of hospice. Threats, fines, warnings, all addressed to a dying woman who could barely get out of bed. I remembered Grandma whispering during her last week, "Don't let them take our home, mijo." At the time, I thought she was delirious. Now I realized she was fighting a battle she never told us about. A battle against Vivian. A battle she didn't win. My chest tightened until I thought it might crack open. This wasn't just harassment. This wasn't just discrimination. This was the destruction of my grandmother's peace in her final days. And that changed everything in me. Because as Lena kept digging, she uncovered one more document, a secret plan involving Gregory Crestwood, a development corporation, and a scheme targeting elderly and military homeowners, including Grandma. And once I saw that document, I stopped defending my property and started preparing to take down an entire criminal network. Lena didn't call me right away when she found the file. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just sent a single photo to my satellite inbox while I sat on an ammo crate in the desert, half awake and half dreading whatever came next. The photo was of a document, yellowed at the edges, creased in the middle, stamped with a corporate logo. Crestwood Urban Holdings, Phase 2 Acquisition Strategy. My grandmother's address was on the list. Not circled, not highlighted. Starred. A sinking heaviness filled my chest as I scrolled through the pages Lena scanned. Every line cut deeper than the last. Each paragraph spelled out something I'd never expected to find in my grandmother's filing boxes. A plan orchestrated by Gregory Crestwood and his business partners. A plan that called Maple Ridge a prime redevelopment opportunity. A plan describing families like mine, military, elderly, or unable to fight legal battles, as high-yield displacement candidates. A plan mapping out which homes could be targeted through policy pressure, violation escalation, and financial motivation tactics. I felt nauseous. These weren't HOA guidelines. These weren't community standards. These were strategies for forced removal.
And Grandma's house was marked as one of the top targets. The plan they never wanted anyone to see. Buried deep inside the pages, Lena found notes from HOA meetings that had never been shared with residents. They included bullet points, handwritten in Vivian's sharp, unmistakable script. Increase fines where leverage is weak. Prioritize families unable to contest decisions due to work or travel obligations. Military deployments equal opportunity window. Elder households unlikely to resist prolonged violation cycles. Push toward voluntary sale through pressure. I stared at the screen. Fists clenched so tight I felt my nails digging into my palms. Vivian and Gregory weren't just abusing their authority. They were running a displacement operation using the HOA as a weapon. And the worst part? They'd tested every tactic on Grandma first. Lena's voice cracked when she finally called me. She was fighting them alone, Stone. She was sick. She was scared. All those letters, she didn't want us to worry. I think she thought she'd solve it before telling us. My heart rattled in my chest. Grandma wasn't just facing illness. She was facing war. And she'd tried to shoulder it all alone so we could focus on building our futures. Vivian had made my dying grandmother's last weeks hell. And suddenly, every violation, every threat, every smug smile Vivian threw at my sister clicked into place. She wasn't protecting community standards. She was protecting profits. The financial crime they accidentally documented. Lena didn't stop there. She kept digging. And that's when the real bomb dropped. Inside a binder labeled HOA Projects 2018-2021, she found invoices for construction work, community upgrades, and consultant fees. But the addresses meant nothing. The contractor names didn't exist in state records. And every payment, every single one, funneled straight into Crestwood Urban Holdings, Gregory's company. $184,000 gone. Disappeared. Stolen from the people they trusted them. Community beautification projects that never happened. Consulting fees for services no one approved. Security assessments created out of thin air. This wasn't mismanagement. This wasn't incompetence. This was embezzlement. Organized, systematic, documented. Lena took 18 photos of receipts signed by Vivian herself. The dates lined up perfectly with the timeline of mysterious fines and targeting of vulnerable families. The nightmare twist. They targeted Grandma until the end. The part that broke me wasn't the fraud. It wasn't even the displacement strategy. It was the letters addressed to Grandma during hospice. Violation notices, demand letters, threats that the HOA would take legal action if she didn't remedy property deficiencies within 10 days. She wasn't strong enough to lift herself from bed, yet they demanded she repaint her fence. They demanded she trim her hedges. They demanded she fix her mailbox. And the last violation? A warning that her continued non-compliance could result in property seizure litigation. Property seizure. Against a dying woman. In her own home. The home she raised me in. The home she protected when she had nothing else. The home she wanted me to inherit. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something colder, sharper, more decisive. A part of me I hadn't felt since my first deployment surfaced. The version of me that appears when innocent people are hurt and someone needs to be held accountable. Vivian Crestwood had no idea what she had awakened. Because the next document Lena discovered didn't just expose fraud, It revealed that Gregory Crestwood and his partners had already sold dozens of Maple Ridge homes to a national developer. Homes they didn't legally own yet. And Grandma's house was one of them. They'd built an empire on threats and forged violations. And now, I was going to tear every piece of it down.
When Lena called again, her voice had that edge I'd only heard a few times in my life. Once when Grandma went into hospice, once when our car broke down on the highway at midnight. And now because she had found something far bigger than either of us expected. Stone, you need to sit down. I didn't sit. Couldn't. I stood in the middle of the operations tent, boots planted in sand, heart thudding like someone was pounding on my rib cage from the inside. Lena sent the next file. A contract. Fully typed, fully signed, fully stamped. Purchase agreement. Eastbrook Development Corporation and Crestwood Urban Holdings. Dated 8 months before Grandma passed. The worst part? 47 properties listed. Properties in Maple Ridge. Properties Gregory and Vivian didn't own. Properties they couldn't sell. Yet there they were, addresses of elderly neighbors, widowed veterans, deployed military families, and my grandmother's home, already marked as pending acquisition. My jaw clenched. My breathing slowed. I felt something inside me lock into place. This wasn't harassment. This wasn't bullying. This wasn't petty HOA drama. This was organized real estate fraud mixed with civil rights violations. The kind of thing I'd learned about in federal training modules, but never imagined I'd see targeting my own family. Lena, this is illegal on so many levels, it's almost impressive. She exhaled shakily. I thought I was imagining it, but Stone, they planned everything. They were removing families who were inconvenient to development profits. Elderly? Easy to pressure. Military? Easy to exploit while deployed. She paused. In Grandma, they squeezed her until she was too exhausted to fight. The anger that settled inside me wasn't a flare of heat. It was a cold, calculated freeze, the kind that meant I was about to move with total clarity. The FBI-level pattern hiding in HOA files. The more Lena uncovered, the worse the puzzle looked. She found forged votes in HOA meeting minutes, altered bylaw pages, duplicate financial records, unapproved consulting fees paid to Crestwood Urban Holdings, emails between Gregory and Eastbrook discussing a timeline for clearing remaining resistance. The Crestwoods weren't just harassing families. They were clearing a neighborhood like a crime syndicate. Every step from bogus violations to private security intimidation was part of a larger machine. A machine Grandma was caught in while she was dying. A machine Lena nearly got crushed by. A machine they thought I'd be too far away to stop. They underestimated me. Badly. The community's silent suffering. While Lena dug into paperwork, she also started talking to neighbors, quietly, carefully, like a teacher gathering information from frightened students. The stories stacked up like bricks in a wall of corruption. Mr. Tran, a retired Air Force medic, fined for improper garden decor. The decor? The small American flag. The Bakers, whose son served in the Navy, cited for non-regulation holiday colors. The Kowalskis, elderly and barely mobile, were threatened over their wheelchair ramp angle. Every time Lena spoke to someone, fear lingered behind their words. People were scared to fight back because the Crestwoods held every lever of control. Violations, fines, intimidation, city connections, a political shield through Gregory's council seat. This wasn't a neighborhood. It was a fiefdom, and Vivian was the tyrant perched on top. The night we realized Vivian wasn't just power-hungry, she was panicking. As evidence piled up, we expected Vivian to double down with more violations and barking orders. Instead, she went quiet. Too quiet. Lena noticed the shift first. Stone, she's been driving past our house at night, not stopping, just watching.
The private security vehicles vanished overnight. Her daily prance around inspections stopped. She pulled down social media accounts. She changed her walking routes. She canceled HOA activities. These weren't the moves of a confident tyrant. These were the moves of someone who realized she had awakened something far bigger than an annoyed homeowner. But her husband Gregory, he wasn't slowing down. He was accelerating. Behind the scenes, he rushed to finalize the development deal, quietly pushing zoning proposals through city channels, likely trying to cash out before the truth leaked. They were scared, cornered, and cornered people do stupid things. I knew they'd lash out eventually, but I wasn't prepared for how vicious the next blow would be. The warning I received from someone unexpected. Late one night, after rationing my comms time and filing reports with JAG, I received a short encrypted message from Captain Naomi Park. "Delgado, we've reviewed the documents your sister found. This isn't just HOA corruption. This meets the criteria for RICO. Do not engage further until federal teams mobilize." RICO. Racketeer-influenced and organized corruption. Mob-level stuff. Cartel-level stuff. And now, Maple Ridge-level stuff. I stared at the message, breath caught in my throat. Grandma's neighborhood wasn't just under attack. It was the center of an emerging criminal investigation, and Vivian had no idea the storm gathering above her head. But she was about to, because panic makes tyrants unpredictable, and her next move wasn't just illegal. It was dangerously unhinged. Because the very next morning, Lena woke up to the sound of shattered glass and discovered her car vandalized with a message so hateful, so personal, that it crossed a line that even the Crestwoods couldn't hide from anymore.